Welcome to Founders Future, a podcast powered by Closers.io, where we dive into the journeys of innovative entrepreneurs and explore the road ahead for them and their companies. I'm your host, Jay Encarnacion, and in each episode, we uncover the stories behind impactful ventures, the challenges faced along the way, and the strategies driving their future growth. Today, we are thrilled to have Javier Tordable, the CEO of Pauling AI. Javier brings an incredible mix of experience from 16 years at Google, leadership roles at Microsoft, and now as the head of a company using AI to revolutionize drug discovery. Through Pauling AI, he's accelerating the journey from idea to molecule with a mission to extend healthy human lifespan. We'll be exploring his founding story, how his business is transforming the pharma landscape, and his vision for scaling this cutting edge venture. So let's dive right in. Javier, welcome to Founders Future.
Thank you so much, Jay. It's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
An absolute pleasure having you on the show, Javier. So would love to start at the top for our listeners here. Take us back to the beginning, Javier. What specific problem in the drug discovery landscape really inspired you to start Pauling AI?
Yeah, so this will not come as a surprise to anybody that is familiar with the drug discovery space, but it's very expensive and it takes a really long time to find a new medicine. So people typically say that it's $1 billion to $2 billion expense, and it takes 10 to 12 years. As you can imagine, that is a problem in and of itself, right? There are a vast number of diseases for which we have no medicine, but we have no cure. And every time that we try to come up with a medicine, it costs an enormous amount of money. It takes a long amount of time, and the probability of success is very limited. So I would say the right question is not what is the problem within drug discovery, but what is not a problem in drug discovery.
Gotcha. Well, absolutely makes sense. So with that and how intricate and involved the pharma landscape space is, how has Pauling AI's offer evolved this far? So from what you're providing to who you're serving, how's that continuously changed to now?
Yeah. Maybe stepping a little bit, right? So given how hard and how long it takes and how expensive it is, when we started Pauling, it was with the goal of creating computer programs that make it easier and faster to find those molecules. Essentially leveraging algorithms and machine learning models that make it easier for scientists to find those molecules. And I would say our thinking has evolved a little bit as we've become more familiar with the space, that we work with customers and partners within the space. I would say the one thing that has changed a little bit is that we've become more and more focused on what the real value is, right? So as opposed to, there are a lot of other tools that people build that focus on the end user, making the end user life easier, right? In drug discovery, I think it's all about the data, right? It's all about finding molecules that serve a useful purpose and getting the data as fast as possible. So that has been, I think, a way that we have shifted a little bit from building tools that people like to use into building tools that are so powerful that they get to the data or that help people get to the data as fast as possible.
With that, and I will tell you, Javier, this space is very new to me as well, and I'm sure much of our listeners. So walk us through the nuts and bolts of Pauling AI, especially how are you generating revenue today? What is the real core offer? How are you offering that to your clients? What does that look like for us?
Yep. I think in order to understand it, it's good to begin with what the overall drug discovery process looks like. So the way this works is people, researchers, scientists, it would typically do experiments in the lab trying to understand a disease or trying to understand some biology fact. Once they feel that they have something valuable, they go through what is called in silico preclinical drug discovery, where they try to model in the computer that biology, that the molecules that we find or the biological facts that they find. Then they get to a point where they may find a molecule that seems to work. They synthesize it, they test it in the real world. Then they iterate back and forth because typically things don't work out the first time. And then they start doing tests in vitro cells, with basically cells in a petri dish, or what's called animal models, mice, worms, and so on. And then once there is enough proof that this molecule may be useful for a disease, they go into what is called clinical trials, which are basically experiments that are done on humans to evaluate whether the drug is efficacious, meaning it actually cures some kind of disease, and is safe, which means that it doesn't kill the patient, right? And those two things are a little bit of a trade-off, right? So if it's a drug for a very dangerous disease, or for a disease where there's no good alternative, the safety can shift a little bit, right? That's why you have cancer drugs, for example, or anti-cancer drugs, right, that are very toxic, right? Because the alternative to the drug is basically dying of cancer. Those trials also take a long time. They are very long-lived experiments. They take many years, but eventually, if everything works out well, the trials give enough evidence that molecule is useful, and then that molecule is approved, it becomes medicine, and then doctors can prescribe it, and then hopefully save lives. So where we operate within polling is basically that first step that goes from an idea to a molecule that can be tested in the lab. So we partner with scientists to help them take the research that they have done and find molecules that can have therapeutic applications. So that process before polling, or in a standard way, would take 6 months, a year, a couple of years. It's not unheard of to spend many years going through that. And we're trying to help scientists perform that much, much faster, literally in a matter of days or weeks. And the way that we partner with them is essentially becoming partners on that molecule, in the sense that if the molecule succeeds and becomes medicine, then we get a certain amount of money because of that. And if it doesn't work out, then the cost to the scientist or the research team or the biotech is minimal.
Understood. Okay, so on that, so you're partnering with scientists to help them find the molecule, and if it ends up working out, that's how you really start making money on that front. So as
Exactly.
far as how you're finding these clients and these partners, how does that work on that front? Help us understand that. What do you have to do to get new clients in for Paulie?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of it is very manual, very much relationship driven. There's just not as many customers for us as for other products, right? Some of them are personal connections, some of them people that I may know from my previous time in big tech at Google, people that I meet at conferences, folks that we connect with because they talk publicly about the work that they do, they publish papers, and so on and so forth. There is, unfortunately, a very small number of potential customers for us, right? Because this process of coming up with a new medicine is very expensive, it's very hard, requires a deep expertise. We're hoping that if we succeed in our mission to create really powerful tools that will also enable more scientists or more research teams to jump into the arena and decide to tackle some of the diseases for which we have no cure. I think this is also one of our hopes, right? That are just today, right? That are maybe between 5,000 and 10,000 diseases for which there's basically no cure whatsoever. And people don't work on them because it's very expensive and very hard. Now, if you suddenly change that and make it much faster and cheaper, then a lot of other scientists, hospitals, research institutions may decide, you know what, let's start trying to work on this, right? And see if we can actually make a meaningful difference for those people, for those patients.
Absolutely correct. And just hats off to you, Javier. This is very new as far as what I'm hearing about this space, but so needed in the world, and just incredible that we have people like yourself who are just so intelligent and really putting that towards such a good cause. So truly appreciate you coming on the show, helping me understand, helping our listeners understand what's out there, what you're doing, and just the changes that you're providing for the future. Just absolutely incredible what you're providing in the space. So help us understand, Javier, what does it look like as far as bottlenecks? My assumption on that front would be how difficult it is to get new clients and new partnerships to work with. But what does that look like for you? What do you think about on a daily basis to try and solve?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much. And I would say, like, for me personally, and I think for everybody else in my team, the mission is what keeps us going, right? I sometimes tell people drug discovery is a really crappy way to make money because there's so much risk and there's so many obstacles along the way, right? But the reason we do that, of course, we're building business, we're trying to make it sustainable and so on, right? But the main reason is the mission, right, that we're in. So I would say the main obstacle is the fact that the likelihood of success is very small. So if you are an early stage biotech, you go through all the stuff and try to say, I'm going to do all this research, get all this data, get my molecule to a point where it's useful, where a pharma company may want to buy it and start running it through clinical trials and commercialize it. The probability of success is very small. Sometimes people say 90% of businesses fail within the first year or so on, right? I think that is probably not true. I don't think it's really as high as 90%, but definitely more than 90% of drug discovery programs fail.
Yeah.
So I think what we're trying to do through the smart use of AI and other technology is we're trying to maximize the probability of success. Sometimes people don't do all the analysis or don't get all the data that they could because they lack the expertise, because it requires a large amount of time and effort and so on. What we're trying to do is we're building tools that help scientists do that, do exhaustive analysis, get all the data that we can possibly can in silico, analyze a variety of different options, run through experiments in a cheap and efficient way with the ultimate hope of improving the likelihood that these molecules would be effective. And the difference can be very substantial, even if we're just a little bit better. So if you look at the numbers, the probability of success of a molecule may be 2%, right? Meaning out of 100 ideas that a scientist has, maybe 2 eventually will become drugs and 98 do not work. So if we can create tools that change that 2 to 3%, okay, just 1% increase, go from 2 to 3, then it means that on average we'll have 50% more drugs. And that is absolutely massive. I think a lot of people sometimes are surprised when they realize that there are very few drugs that actually become medicines, become commercialized. It's on the order of 30 to 40 a year. That's it. There's 30 new medicines every year. So if we can go from 30 to 40 to 50 to 60, right? Like that makes a big difference for the millions and millions of people out there, right? That suffer from all sorts of diseases.
Just incredible how this all comes about and the way that you're thinking about just completely reinvigorating the space, building in the space, growing, and it's just going to help so many people with what you're doing. So just again, truly appreciate you coming on the show and walking us through that. Talk to us about your vision here, Javier, as far as your top priorities for growing polling AI, especially
Yep.
how difficult the space is, how intricate it is. What are you really focused on over the next year to continue that growth and scaling the company?
Yeah. So the focus for us is in building a good, high quality product, right? I would say that is the top priority. The good thing is we don't need a lot of customers, right? We don't need a lot of customers. We don't need to succeed many different times, right? Because once one of these molecules or a few of these molecules succeed, then that basically pays for everything else. In a way, it's a model that is very similar to venture capital. Sometimes people say if you have 10 investments in 10 companies and VC checks, one of them would basically pay for everything else, and then the other ones don't really matter that much. I think it's very similar in the sense that if only one of these molecules becomes a drug, that basically pays for everything else that we do. So in that sense, what we're focusing on is building a product that is really high quality, that does all the things that we want it to do. In some ways, you can think about it as a ChatGPT kind of product, but instead of telling you about like the kinds of things that people use ChatGPT for, telling you about history or explaining questions or helping kids with their homework or helping you learn a new language or whatever, is a product that has a lot of the tools that the scientists would use to go through this drug discovery process.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And that's just the beauty and the power of AI and technology and just the continuous advancements that we're seeing every day. Every guest that I have on the show now, Javier, is talking about AI, how they're implementing it in their business. And this is just an incredible way to take AI, implement it into the real world, and look at the types of applications that it can have. Just absolutely blowing my mind. Amazing to hear what AI is really getting to. And I know that it's just going to keep on getting better and keep on growing, keep on innovating. So just incredible on that side there. Talk to us with how AI driven you are. What do you see as the evolution in the drug discovery industry in the coming years? And how are you really positioning Pauling to take advantage of that evolution?
Yep. Yeah, I would say it's much, much broader, right, than
Yeah.
any specific industry, any specific product. In many ways, is an incredibly powerful technology that is very generally applicable. And I think, of course, everybody's talking about it lately, right? But so it's hard to distinguish what is hype versus what is real. But I think it is going to be very transformational because of a couple of different things. Like one of them is so much of the work that we do today across many different industries, across many different roles, is work in front of a computer, right?
Mm.
So we read documents, we process documents, we type things, and so on and so forth. Right? Very few of us are actually interacting with the physical world so much anymore. That leads to a point where a lot of this work that humans do can be automated in some ways. And AI, as it is today, right, has got to a point where many of the tasks that required a human before can be done by a language model, by a chat GPT kind of model. So if you think about it, high level, a lot of the work that, say, a marketing person may do, writing copy, finding stock images or generating images, sending email, crafting campaigns, contacting publishers to put up their ads on their websites or whatever. So much of that stuff can be automated by a language model. If you think about what a CPA does or a bookkeeper does, looking at receipts, extracting data, adding it to a spreadsheet or to a database, a lot of that can be automated by a language model. If you think about a strategy in running a business, which customers to focus on, finding their contact information, crafting an offer for them, reaching out, and so on and so forth, so much of that can be done by a language model. So what we're saying at polling is that that same notion can be applied to many different ways within drug discovery, right? A lot of the tasks that scientists perform can be automated in the same way. And the really amazing thing is technology advances very fast, whether we like it or not. So in other areas, the advances haven't been as fast. So if you look at airplanes, right? Airplanes fly at, I don't know, the same speed today as they did 30 years ago, right? There hasn't been that much progress. But AI is moving so fast and advancing so much that even if there is a specific task that we can do today, we may be able to do it next month or next year. So if you think of maybe a language model cannot fully automate some of the things that experts do today, right? You can't probably have a language model design a building for you from scratch, right? It's just maybe not good enough to do all the CAD plans and figure out the materials and create the renders and so on. But a year from now, that may be possible. 2 years from now, probably, right? The amazing thing of working in this space is that the technology is improving so fast, right? That every week, every month, right? Like we find that we can do things that were just impossible a short while back.
Incredible. Incredible. Well, with that, Javier, I have one more question for you out of our lightning round. This is for our listeners, and this is going to be on the advice side of things. Someone with your stature, just extremely intelligent and incredible background, and just really changing lives with what you're doing now. What kind of advice can you offer to our listeners tuning in, other founders and entrepreneurs who are starting to build their business and are going through some tough times? And what's something that you can offer before you're on the show?
Yeah, I would say just go for it. I think if anything, we should probably have more entrepreneurs than we have. I think so many people are just very comfortable doing what is expected of them, right? Studying and finding jobs and so on. And they don't have as much agency or as much impetus to go and start their own thing, trying to build a product that makes people happy and or that satisfies a customer need. And I would say just go for it, right? Sometimes the risk of not working out is not as big as we think.
Absolutely. And just incredible overall. Truly appreciate you, Javier. With that, that is going to wrap up another inspiring episode of Founders Future. I just want to thank you again, Javier, again, coming on the show, sharing your remarkable journey and your insights. It was truly a pleasure. Opened my eyes to so much more of how much it really does take to help humans and provide these types of things and new medicines and the way that just the process that it takes to get there. So just truly incredible stuff what you're doing. And I know that you're going to achieve some amazing things. So again, it was an honor to have you on the show, really letting us in on the process and the way that you think and how you're going to continue to grow Pauling. To our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, which I know so many of you have, as did I, don't forget to subscribe to Founders Future wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also find more resources and insights at closers.io. where we're dedicated to helping businesses accelerate their growth through trained appointment setters and world-class marketing systems. Until then, keep climbing, and we'll see you on the next one.